What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing the front brakes on my 2011 Toyota Corolla S. It's been squeaking really bad. I've been putting this off because I just didn't really want to have to fool with it too much, but I need to do it. I cheaped out before and I bought the brake pads that tend to put off a lot of dust. And when I cleaned it yesterday, I was like, oh, this is terrible. So I went to the store. I bought some new stuff, ceramic pads. I brought new rotors because it needs new rotors. They just look a little worn, and the car's, what is it, 11 years old now. So I'm just gonna replace it just to be safe, to have a smoother braking. But I'm gonna show you the step-by-step process. Anybody can do it if you got the driveway. I think the best thing to go about it is, I'm using this kind of tire iron. You can use the one that comes in the car. I don't have the one for the car. I don't know where it's at. I don't know. We bought the car used, so they probably kept it. But I have this. I went to Harbor Freight. A lot of people, you can rent the tool from your local auto parts store to do it, but this 5-inch C-clamp from Harbor Freight works wonders. And I think I spent maybe $5 on it, so that's the deal. But here's my rotors, 2 front ones. I'm gonna be doing the drum brakes later. I just do not have time to do them now. So I can show you all that later, but I bought the high carbon formulation Duralast Gold, 2 of those, and then the ceramic Duralast Gold up here, because these are the lowest dust quality brake pads that like AutoZone had. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start by taking off the tire and everything, loosen up the lug nuts, and then I'll show you the process from there. So now that I got the jack underneath this, I'm gonna take this last lug nut off. You can take pretty much all of them off until the last one, just because you don't want the tire actually coming off while it's sitting there. So you just leave one on, just kind of tight, and just like that. It's already wanting to come off. So now, I'm just gonna put my hand on it and just hold it in place while I jack it up. Now when you jack it up, you want to jack it up on one of the pinch welds or a good support on the frame. That way you do not ruin your side skirt or bust plastics. But there we are. Tire is removed. If you have smaller jack stands, like 1-ton or 2-ton jack stands, now would be a good time to probably put one up here underneath the frame or somewhere around here. Not on this arm, but somewhere in here. Just to give it a little extra support while your jack's holding it, because if you're using the tools that come with the car, it's a little scissor jack. So I would recommend getting a little 1-ton or 2-ton just to help out, because those scissor jacks, I've had them break on me while I'm working. And I had to replace the rotor on a vehicle because the scissor jack broke. Next step, we're gonna remove this bolt right here and this bolt right here. And that will release the caliper, which holds the pads in. We're gonna pull that out, move it to the side. One thing I do wanna show you, even though you may have backed this bolt out, it still might be stuck in here. That's because there's still pressure on this little piston right here. So you might be able to reach in here and push it down with your fingers like I can, but one might be stuck. So what you want to do is take a flathead screwdriver or a little small pry, something just to get in between those, and slowly work you a gap. Don't really strain, you don't want to mess anything up, but just work it to where you work that piston down enough to where it gets flat, and then it's free moving. Because now it'll tilt out like this. I'll pry this one loose just enough and we'll move it out. Once you take the caliper off, it will hang there, but I don't like putting pressure on the brake line like that. So I just got a little small tub that like my hose came in, and I'm just using that. Just keep it up a little bit higher to keep the tension off this line. I don't want to put too much stress on it. I don't want it to break that, and then I have to replace the brake line as well. So now we're going to remove these brake pads. They're fairly simple. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screwdriver in here and kind of bump it out. And you already see how this one's coming. And just like that, brake pad removed. Now, this doesn't look bad, and there's still plenty of life on this pad, so I'll probably keep it just in case. The only problem is this pad, like I said, is putting off a ton of dust. I mean, it's insane. I don't like it. I don't like the cleanup, and it's because I cheaped out in the beginning, and I shouldn't have. So we just gonna keep those where they are, and then maybe use them later. I probably won't, to be honest. Those are, I just hate how much brake dust they do. But if you're on a budget and you really don't care, they're like $20 cheaper to buy these versus what I'm going to be putting on here, which is the low dust, high carbon stuff. So it's you have the option to do it, but I would go with the high carbon. If you want to just do the brake pads, that's as far as you need to go. You can just take these old clips out if you want, or you can reuse the old clips. It really doesn't matter. In my opinion, I've changed a bunch of brakes, and if these are loose, I replace them. But if they're still in there tight like these are, I leave them. I just reuse them. And you can just put the new pads in. I'll show you later on how to compress the piston, but that's where the C-clamp comes into play, and you compress that piston, put it back on here, put your 2 bolts back in, put your tire back on, you're done. We're changing the rotor though now, and you have to come back here, and there is a 17mm bolt here, and there's one down here, right here. You have to remove these 2 17mm bolts, and it'll remove this bracket. And once that bracket's free, the caliper will then come free. This caliper is gonna need some persuasion. It's not just gonna come off. Some might. I've had it to where we can just slide them off, slide them back on. However, this one feels pretty tight. So I have a mallet, and you're just gonna beat each side. And then the back, you can't really hit over here because it has this little shield plate. But you can beat the back of it right here, beat this side, until it slowly works it enough to where you can take it off yourself. Now that I got the caliper off, what I'm doing now is I'm taking a little damp cloth and I'm wiping down this little plate, this little shield plate behind it. I want everything to be clean when I put it back on. Like I said, if you're frustrated with this caliper, you just got to put some persuasion into it. Hit it literally as hard as you can. You're replacing it anyway, so it really doesn't matter. I wouldn't assume you'd be saving the old ones, but if you are, I guess be careful with the way you're hitting them. But I'm not saving mine, so I'll be turning those into the scrapyard. But I just like to wipe everything down, clean everything up, make it look good, the install, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Just cleaning it up a little bit. Wiped it off with a damp cloth. I'm gonna take a dry one and just rub it down. All right, so here's our old one. Here's our new one. Like I said before, you can use some persuasion on these, or you can find 2 little bolts that fit this. These 2 little small holes, both the new and the old have them. And you just screw those bolts in and it will pull this off of the actual hub, but I find it easier just to use a mallet or some sort of hammer just to get it off. I mean, it's just quicker that way. to me at least. I mean, I'm not saving this, so. But this is the new one. It's supposed to have this black coating on it because per the instructions, after the break-in period, it should look like this. But I'm excited to get this on here because I'm tired of my brakes squeaking. Once you get your bracket mounted back, it's time to put the old brake pads on. It's a fairly simple process. Let's see if y'all can see for right there. Adjust it for you. You're basically just going to keep this shape, how it rounds, you're going to keep it with the actual caliper. So I like to put the bottom in first. You kind of want to put it in at an angle so that it moves in. You can get the top piece in. Once that's in, you push it in. And I like to push it flush with the actual rotor itself. And then we're going to do the same thing with the back side. Like I said, very, very simple process. Same thing with this one. Keep this shape. This one you kind of got to look a little bit. You might need a feel. It'll go in just like that. Pinching the rotor. And there's a look at it. If you put them on there, that's what it's going to look like, pinched together. Now it's time for us to compress that piston. I'm going to wipe it down first, but we're going to compress this piston and we'll slide it on. I'll show you how to compress it. I'm going to rest it right about here. You're going to take this top side, find you a nice little flat spot over there. This one's been opened up a good bit, so I'm going to just like this. Find you a good flat side, and when it begins to make contact, I'm going to readjust my little spot. I want a little bit better spot. Right about here. I'm going to go really slow. I'm actually going to come right in here. I'm going to go real slow. I'm going to slowly push this piston in. Of course, you can do this with a big screwdriver. I've seen that done. And then you can rent the tool at your auto parts store, but this is just, for the price, it's the easiest way. It just takes a couple adjustments to keep pushing the piston down all the way, because when you put these new brake pads on, especially if yours are old, you're not going to be able to put this caliper back on without compressing this piston. So now that I got it, back this off just so I can take it off. Now that I have this flush with the opening, I'll be able to take this, come right here, and you can see how it fits very loosely on it. You just rest it on there. And now we're going to put our 14mm bolts back in. Alright, everything's bolted back up, secured. All we have left to do is put the tire on. So there you have it. Fairly simple process. I took a little bit longer because I was cleaning everything, but you can do the same. It still doesn't take you that long. Just make sure you're safe when you're doing it. Be careful. This is a tight fender well, so it's hard to get a lot of angles to wrench. So you can use a, if you've got a socket, you can put a socket on here and then bump it with a rubber mallet to make sure it's good and tight if you don't have that kind of leverage. But one thing I wanted to mention, I'm not going to do it yet because I'm going to do the other side as well before I do it, but do not just hop in this car and begin to drive it after you change the brakes and compress that piston in the caliper. If you do that, you will not have brakes. You have to get in your car once you change the brakes and pump the pedal to get the brake fluid back down and to make that caliper tight on those pads. Again, you will not have brakes if you don't do that. So just remember that when you get done. But I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you in the next one.